Okay, now we'll look at the other superpower of a list comprehension. The first thing we looked at was what we might call a transforming list comprehension. And now we're going to look at a different one. We're going to look at something called a filtering list comprehension. So the transforming was when we transformed each item. Now we're just going to look at each one and see if it matches a criteria. Now you'll recognize this from the homework. We were looking at each line in a file, and you can see here we're simulating 4 lines. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm putting them on 2 lines just for space reasons. We've got 4 lines here. 2 of them are from 1972. The other 2 are from 1973. And we want to be able to specify a particular year, just like we did in numerous assignments previous to today. So if we are just interested in the 1972 lines, we can use the algorithm that you see here. On line 6, we create a new empty list. We loop through the items in this list of lines, and you can see each one is a string. If the line begins with 4 digits, 1972, we'll say we like that line and we'll include it. And obviously I could make 1972 into a variable, and then thus you'd be able to choose whichever year, lines from whichever year that you'd prefer. But this is a classic filtering algorithm, and it takes a few lines because we need to initialize a list. We need to loop through the source list. We need to check each item against a criteria. And if it passes the criteria, we want to append it to a target list. And so at the end, of course, we're seeing just the lines for 1972. And that's no real surprise. But now let's switch this into a list comprehension and compare. Now we should be able to go ahead and delete or comment out everything we did previously so we can compare and see that the result is the same. And as I did before, I'm going to change the input slightly so I can see that it's working on the latest data and not running some earlier version of the program. So you might want to take a pause again and take a look at this list comprehension and see if you can make sense of it. Okay, we're using the same structure that we used before, and it might be helpful for me to bring that up. Here on line 6, I have the original list comprehension that we used to do transforming. Word.rstrip for word in words. Now what we're seeing on line 7 is a filtering list comprehension with no transform. So it might look a little strange that we're saying line for line in lines, but what we're really saying is leave unchanged the item for each item in the list of items if the item's first 4 digits are equal to 1972. So we're able to produce a filtering list comprehension that will return some of the lines, but not all, into a new list. And so, of course, implicit in this, if you compare the syntax in lines 8 through 11, and you compare that to line 6, you can see that a lot of the elements are there. The for loop is there for line and lines. The if statement is there if the 4 digits are equal to 1972. The only thing that's really missing is the append. There is no append because, of course, as with the previous list comprehension, the append is implicit. So as you can see, it's actually quite easy to make a filtering list comprehension. And in fact, we could even combine them. I could do something that I might ask you to do in the homework. I could do a transform on each item and combine that with a filtering so that I'm saying in this line now, for each line in the list of lines, if the first 4 digits of the line is equal to 1972, then split the line and take the second item from that line. So we should get in the end just the 23.9 and the 200.1 because we have asked Python not only to filter the lines, but then for each filtered line, do a transform. In this case, split the line and take the second item. I'm giving away a lot of the homework here, but I hope this is clear why this would be useful. What we're replacing is several lines. As we did before, and this was really very much a part of the homework, we said for each line in the file, if the line matches our criteria, then go ahead and split the line and append the last item from the split to the new list. In other words, we have in one statement replaced 4, 5, or 6 lines, 5 lines of code. Now, some folks may look at this list comprehension and say, well, this isn't very clear, and I understand that Python is all about clarity. And you're right, it is. But I am here to tell you that once you get used to reading list comprehensions, they're actually easier to read than 4 or 5 lines of code. And that's because reading 4 or 5 lines of code means keeping in mind what you're looking at, keeping in mind the variables that you're looking at as your eye scans from statement to statement. What was in S lines? What was in lines? Hopefully our variables are well named to aid in this process. But another way to handle this is to write out the entire algorithm as a single statement and then be able to read that statement in one line. It actually makes it easier to grasp once you get used to the syntax. The other big benefit about using a list comprehension is that you can place this list comprehension in any sort of statement. So it could be possible that you have some sort of function and that at the very end of the function, you just return this. You're returning a list that's doing all these things, absolutely. And what you're really doing is you're concentrating that code down into a single statement so you can show off, basically, so that you can do it efficiently, do it quickly in the assumption that shorter is usually better as long as it's clear. And that's what you would be doing. It's quite possible that you can reduce your code size, increase its readability in one step by using the list comprehension. So that's what list comprehensions are for. Now, part of the reason that I call this a power tool is that it's doing something that you could do on your own, right? We've demonstrated that there's nothing that or at least the ones we've looked at, there's nothing that a list comprehension can do that just a regular algorithm like this one could do. But I'm here to say that if you have to do the same sort of algorithm over and over and over again, and you're finding it quite tedious, it can be quite a boon and very exciting to be able to do it in a list comprehension. Everybody will benefit except for those that aren't familiar with them. It's very important that you become familiar with them as well, because many, many people use them. We see them all over the literature, and you'll see them in Stack Overflow. And so you do want to become familiar enough with them so that you can recognize them when you see them.